Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I am your co-host, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today let's talk about The Handmaid's Tale.
So, really quickly, we just want to say a great big welcome to all of you. And sorry for the fan in the background. Unfortunately, our studio is in our attic, so...
And it's so hot.
Yes. So if you hear that fan in the background, I'm going to try to edit it out in post, but if I'm not successful, I apologize for that during the course of this episode.
Yeah, hopefully it'll get to the point to where you don't notice it anymore.
We also want to give a spoiler alert for those of you who have not seen the show yet.
Yep.
We will be talking about the entire first season of The Handmaid's Tale, a little bit about the book as well. That being said, spoilers obviously to come in the discussion.
And then also, too, we're going to just go ahead and throw out a trigger warning just to be on the safe side in case we bring up some of the particularly bad things that happen in the book. I mean, the whole thing pretty much is a trigger warning for me, but...
It was very difficult to watch for both of us.
Yeah, honestly, this is one of the very few shows that I would suggest you not binge watch.
Yes.
Because you need to have a breather in between each episode to kind of gather yourself up again.
Yeah, especially for us. We'd started it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were working on Get Out at the time, and watching The Handmaid's Tale and Get Out at the same time really it was difficult to do.
I had to definitely think of some happier things.
Yeah, we needed to take time between each episode. It was about 2 days between each episode for us, just to kind of digest it and really kind of fully, kind of go through with that, which tells you how we felt about it all. We want to let you know right now too that this is probably going to be a 2-part episode because we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and we have something surprising.
Well, surprising, but it's going to be coming up right here after we talk about our reviews. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope that you enjoy this podcast. To stick around for part 2, let us know at the end. We'll give you the ways to give us feedback at the end, as always, And also, we ask that you listen to our other episodes, too, because that would be great.
Yeah, and subscribe and share us because you love us, and we love you.
Yep. Really briefly, our review and summary. Like I said, it was hard for me to watch, but it was also one of the most engaging television shows that I've seen this year. We've talked about a lot of television shows on the podcast. We've talked about... whole series and whole seasons and pulled out things from seasons and series. But this one, by far, This Is Us maybe is a close second. I don't know if it's by far, but is definitely one of my favorites. Really, because each episode got me to think and really made me feel guilty for some things for my own privilege as a man. And, considering that they didn't really go into depth about the racism from the book, but you saw that also it was mostly, the white guys who were kind of in control.
Still in charge, yeah.
But yeah, it was still men who were more kind of that thing. But the summary of it, obviously, is taken from Margaret Atwood's book that was published in 1985. And... an amazing tale about a somewhat near future takeover of the United States government and its systems, and by a complete theocracy. That's my short, brief summary.
Okay, and as always, I'm going to go a little bit deeper,
Yeah,
a little bit longer. So, we're following along with the tale of Fred. I can never say it because it's so strange because it's of Fred, but it's Offred.
And it's supposed to be
Offred.
like that so that it sounds like offered.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
So we're following along with her journey. She just arrived at the new commander's house. The handmaid before her had actually killed herself, which, as we find out throughout the series, is a pretty common thing. Like, this happens quite a bit for obvious reasons. I mean, you're pretty much forced to carry children. So in this dystopia, for those of you who for some reason aren't going to watch it, the world is having a lot of health problems. A lot of people no longer can bear children, or there's a lot of people who aren't fertile anymore. And so as a result, the world's population is declining. As a result, there's not as many workers to continue to do the work to keep everybody else alive. So as a solution, this extreme right-wing group takes over the government to try to repopulate, essentially. Anybody who can't, if they're not already a part of the group, I mean, they're apparently taken back to the power plants, right? Yeah. And essentially are there to die.
The colonies which clean up nuclear waste.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But anyway, yeah, sorry. I know I would have...
You're just going to retell the whole story.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. And then... No, I'm just kidding.
So our very special surprise is that through random happenstance, coincidence, I happen to know one of the writers for the show. She was actually my boss at Starbucks a while ago when I was working for Starbucks way back when.
Before we met.
Yeah, so it's... I don't know about privacy issues and about if I can say her full name, but her first name is Lynn. So we sent her, she very graciously, I have to say, I am very, very thankful that she agreed to this. But we sent her a list of questions just for her to answer for the show and to give us a little bit of feedback to about the show. To use for this podcast. So I'm going to have Kathy read her response, but I'm going to read you the list of questions that we sent out to her. Just to let you know, there will be some links that will be referenced in her response that we have put in the episode description, so you can check those out and read at your own pleasure. But these are the list of questions that we sent to her. Number 1, what was your favorite part of this season? Number 2, what was your least favorite? Number 3, was it difficult writing some of the scenes? Which in particular? Number 4, how did the piece change you, either the book or working on the show? Number 5, do you see parallels with the piece in our current world? Number 6, what should our general takeaways from this piece be in general? Number 7, what should religion's takeaways be from this piece? Number 8. If you could adapt any book into a television show, which book would it be and why? And you'll hear from her response that she actually couldn't really respond directly to our questions, but she did respond, which is great, and Kathy's going to read that here in just a second. But also, if you would like to answer those questions for yourself, that would be fantastic. Again, listen to the end of the episode. We'll give you ways to give us feedback and also to answer these questions for yourself.
Yep, and we'll put the questions in the description too, so you can read them again.
It's going to be a long description.
It is going to be a long description. That's all right.
All right.
Okay, so her response was that these are great questions. They really are. Most of these I can't really answer in a way that would be helpful for you, though, particularly because I can speak on my own experience of writing on the show, and I can't speak to everyone's experience of watching the show simply because it's so individualized. One of the things I'd love to see as the episodes have come out was how many different people from all different backgrounds took totally different things away from the show, and that's exactly what we wanted. The entire show has been my favorite part of the season, honestly. It's a brilliant group of writers, cast, and crew, and we've been thrilled with how it's all come together. There have been several interviews that Elizabeth Moss and Margaret Atwood have done that might speak to some of your questions about religion. and she sent some of her particular favorite links, and we actually, like I said, we put them in the description below. As far as my own experience, she continues, I've loved The Handmaid's Tale since college, and am so completely thrilled that I get to have a part in bringing it to life. I've read it so many times now that I have entire sections memorized. And as far as the last question, I have so many books that I would love to see adapted into a TV series. As a TV writer, working on developing new projects is a huge part of my daily life, so I'm always looking. And again, we want to say a big thank you to her because she really didn't have to do this. I mean, Miguel hasn't talked to her in years.
Yeah.
So
the last time I talked to her, I sent her a message about wanting to start a collaborative project, which was going to be a YouTube series, which I never got around to because I was so busy working with youth and youth ministry stuff. So, it was something that, I'm still kind of engaged with trying to maybe do one day, but it's one of those back burner ideas that I'm probably not going to get around to anytime soon. So again, thank you, Lynn, especially if you listen to the episode and, you can give us feedback on the episode too, if you liked it or not, and, share it with the other writers on the show. That would be fantastic. But you don't have to. So moving on from there, we want to talk a little bit about the parallels. Since we did see a lot of parallels for ourselves with our own experience in just watching the show, as well as with just reading some of the interviews and watching what's going on in our world, and with you can tell from other podcasts from what we've been through in our lives. So first of all, I want to stress that Margaret Atwood wrote this in East Germany. In East Berlin, during the time of the Berlin Wall, right before Ronald Reagan.
Who's Robert Reagan?
I have no idea who Robert Reagan is. His brother, I don't know, his twin brother that wears a goatee and mustache is really evil.
All right, he hides behind curtains and stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Just like Jesus, because that's where you find Jesus, is behind the curtain. Sorry, it's an old comic book joke. So historically, this is a lot of writing from her own experience. She was born in 1939, so she experienced some of World War II as a child, and just a lot of these things that she experienced, and so getting to see that world after that. In East Berlin is there was a lot of spying. There was a lot of the stuff that was going on. Historically, as well as in these societies that were totalitarian societies. She also saw, and you'll see this in one of the interviews, that birth rates dropped. So it wasn't too unfeasible for her or for her world that this was something that could actually happen. That it's something that draws from a lot of things in history.
Oh yeah, well, because a lot of the times, when people are under a lot of stress, their bodies legit won't let them get pregnant because they're like, we have to take care of you right now. We can't support you having something else inside of your body. And then also too, birth rates have also dropped in countries where there's severe famine because there's not enough nutrition. Anytime that there's a lot of stress. So whenever there's a totalitarian regime, for example, in North Korea doesn't have a very high birth rate. That, of course, is a lot of factors, but, it's totally possible for a society to have their population drop.
Oh yeah. This is something that, also historically you see, especially within religions, that both of these things kind of happen when you have two different factions of the same religion fighting for dominance over doctrine. You saw it with Catholics and Protestants. You saw it, So you can study probably the birth rates during the reign of, Elizabeth I and her sister Mary, Queen of Scots.
I would say starting with her dad because he's the one that started it all in England.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Henry VIII kind of really put that on the spot there. And you can probably see this in modern day Syria and modern day Iraq with the fighting between the Sunni and the Shiite Muslims. You even probably see it a little bit in America right now too. I don't know if anybody's studying our birth rates at the moment here between presidents and the changing over the guard rather, but that would be an interesting study to do. So if there is a scientist that listens to this episode and is doing that study, we'd like to read that study afterwards.
Or if somebody has actually researched it, because we haven't, found the actual links, let us know.
Yeah, that would be great too. And this really comes to our own story with us. We shared before our story about our miscarriages in our This Is Us pilot episode. Mm-hmm. That we talked about how we struggled with our own fertility, with the miscarriages, and with stress. Is that before we moved to Colorado during that time, Kathy was really stressed at work.
Oh yeah, no, I hated my job. And our 2 miscarriages actually happened while we were in Jamestown, and I was to the point to where I was driving, as I was driving to work, I would cry because I hated it so much. My boss stressed me out. I felt like she was on my case for no reason, and she would not give me any support, is what it really boils down to. And she wouldn't tell me how to fix things. She just told me what was wrong, but not how to fix it. And so that was really stressful. And so I definitely needed to get out of there. And I know that it was taking a toll on my body in other ways too, because I would have stomach aches all the time. I was tired all the time. My back hurt really bad all the time. And really, stress can do a lot on your body. It isn't just an overall emotion. It can literally wear you down.
For myself, it was a lot of not dealing with my emotions after the miscarriages. That I had this concept that I built in my mind of men don't express their feelings, men don't deal with their feelings, that men have to take care of their families, and so therefore, as a man, I need to portray a strong front for my wife. I need to show that it's not impacting me as much as it is, and I never healed from it that well. And when we moved to Colorado, it took a toll on me because I was working a part-time job, so I had a lot of extra time to just sit and think, which was not good for me. And we went in for tests and all these other things, but I'm pretty sure it was the stress. The stress really got to us. In fact, it was almost kind of a funny thing that once it was sort of relieved, when we felt like we were going to be okay and safe in Cleveland, that we got pregnant with Peter. Mm-hmm. So it's there's a lot to say for stress in that situation. And so there are parallels a lot with what's going on in our modern world, and with what's kind of happening in the show and throughout the book is kind of, you see these takes of these different sects. And with anything, it's almost any movement that you have kind of this separation of people that believe something else. And it has a lot to do with how we've talked about before, how we really need to just sit down and talk with each other and really kind of flesh out how we're to deal with differing thoughts and to explore them. And by the way, there's a fantastic couple of episodes from Invisibilia on NPR. Check them out. They're wonderful, about emotions, about reality, and it deals with coming to terms with two differing ideas on things. And I wrote about it some in my blog this week, so check that out as well. But I want to hand this over to Kathy because I feel like she has much more to say about this next section than I do.
That was a weird segue, but all right. So, as you watch the show, and as you read the comments and the articles, a lot of them are talking about how this movie is kind of expressing modern feminism's like worries of what could be, and how it's in the realm of possibility that this may happen. And I know a lot of you don't necessarily like the word feminism, so I want to clarify that feminism, as you know, has gotten a bad name. Like the people who don't like feminism to begin with have worked it into this like all feminism, or all people who are feminists hate men. They all are out for themselves. They want to squish men and have women on top. And that is not the case. What they are describing is not feminism. That's actually misandry, which is the hatred of men. Which there are people out there who do feel that way, who do hate men. However, it's not feminism. They're completely different. And right now we're in the third wave of feminism. And with that, what it mostly has to deal with is equal rights for all. And that also includes men. Like, one of the things that a lot of feminists are now fighting for is paternity leave. Like, once, for new fathers. Because a lot of companies, you have to save up your sick time and vacation time in order to actually take some time off when the baby is born. Which you shouldn't have to do that,
Yeah.
I mean, you were lucky. You got to stay home a little bit longer than most people, but
Yeah, because the church provided me paternity leave.
and it's tough, and it kind of adds to the pressure of the women has to stay at home to take care of the children. But if we start giving men more parental rights, it's going to start to help boost women as well, as showing men that it's okay to take on the, being a parent, being the parental figure. Like, you don't have to be this guy that just goes to work, come home and eats dinner and goes to sleep, and that's all, you have interactions with. Like, we need to have men who are more involved in their families, which luckily nowadays, especially with millennials, that is the case. A lot of millennials want to be there for their kids, which is great.
It really, there are a lot of people who look down on me because of how much I was putting in for my son, especially because I was the one that had to bring him to work after he was born, after we both got, used up our family leave.
Yeah.
And, it was a lot of that. Well, why isn't Kathy bring him in with her? Or why isn't he in daycare? And a lot of that, is like, well, she works at a bank.
Yeah, I can't just
You can't have a baby at a bank. And I have an office. That's a completely different thing. A private office with a bathroom. And, it's just kind of silly, and it really, I don't know. I think that families are changing. And a lot of, especially with, from where we were even, 50 years ago, even 20 years ago. I'm thinking of my dad now on Father's Day, is that my dad worked so hard to provide for our families, but I think it's also because he had that construct made for himself that, men have to provide for their family.
I have to do this. And unfortunately, as a result of that stigma that men have to, be the breadwinners and, be the ones that are away from home working, that they can't advocate for themselves to be with their family more.
And I also find it incredibly interesting that Elizabeth Moss is in both of these series. In The Handmaid's Tale and in Mad Men, which both have to do with the breaking of the misogynist systems that were in place, to kind of keep women down, to keep other people down. Actually, it's not just women, but everybody. It's minorities and all of this stuff. And so Mad Men was about breaking that and women breaking into the advertisement agency and all of this stuff. And then you have Handmaid's Tale, where you have this extremist religious group that takes, kind of takes society back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
And,
oh, yeah. And the thing, too, is I'm not sure if a lot of you, know this, but Atwood, when she wrote all of the things that happened to the women as being historical. This really has happened before. Women not being able to own their own bank account or have their own credit card. I mean, that was recent. I mean, as recent as the 70s, women weren't allowed to have a credit card without the approval of her husband if she was married. That would not fly today. I can go out right now and get myself a credit card, and, Miguel wouldn't even have to know about it. I mean, I don't, because I'm kind of, scared of too many credit cards, but, it's my right. If I wanted to do that, he couldn't stop me. I could just go ahead and do it. And the fact that so many women kind of have forgotten the good points about feminism, about what it has actually brought to us on the table now, Meghan Trainor, for example, she doesn't want to be classified as a feminist. Taylor Swift doesn't. And then, of course, there's Tommy Lauren, and they just all... They're just stuck on this bad view of feminism that women are trying to, push men down and put themselves on top. And then, of course, we have those women who, Emma Watson, who are no. That's not what feminism is about. Feminism is about bringing everybody together, putting everybody on an equal playing field. And not just men and women. We're also talking about minorities as well, too, because... Unfortunately, especially today, one of the bad things about the modern feminist movement, and this is coming from a feminist, is there's a big focus on white girl feminism. As in, they forget about their fellow women of minorities, that they also have to, fight two battles, that they're women and that they're also minorities, and that comes with a whole other bag of difficulties. And unfortunately, there are some white girls in the feminist movement currently who kind of just want to disregard that. Be like, no, that's a race issue. Let's keep your race issue over on the race issue side, and let's just focus on just women stuff. But they kind of forget that part of the feminist movement in history was actually helped along by minorities.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can't work against each other. We have to work together.
Well, and there was a great comment I had put out on my Facebook wall for my Facebook friends about what themes stood out to you during the watching of The Handmaid's Tale. And I had a friend from high school, actually, chime in and say that when women stick together and not fight against each other, that that they can accomplish anything. And I think this is true of all human beings, because it's not just women who are feminists. There was this group of guys in college who all had shirts printed out that say "I am a feminist," but I think that they were just wearing them just to impress women. But that's a different story for a different day. But there are men who are really feminists, who are really looking for an equal society. I would love for my wife to get equal pay for equal work. I would love for my wife to be seen as truly equal, because she is, in my own eyes, she is my equal, and she is my other half. It's not a better or worse half. It's just the other half, because I am the other one. And so, I mean, you have these like Ryan Reynolds. This is a thing that he said recently, which I loved. Maybe not recently.
It was right after he had his baby.
Yeah, and so he said that, of course I'm changing diapers because my wife carried the baby for 9 months. She pushed the baby out of her. She's done enough. Is that, this I took that to heart because, I changed the vast majority of Peter's diapers. Mm-hmm. I am usually up with him. I'm usually, right there taking care of him because it's not just my wife's job, it's my job too. Mm-hmm. We are equal partners in this. We are equal partners in raising him. We're equal partners in providing for him. And I think that when there is an imbalance in the system, I was about to say an imbalance in the force, and I caught myself. But when there's an imbalance in the system, that things get bad really quickly.
Oh yeah.
And I think that that's what this show portrays. The book portrays as well, is that that this is an imbalance in the system, that it's not. And I think it does this really well, especially in the relationship of Fred and his wife.
Serena, maybe? Is that what it is?
Serena, possibly.
I can't remember.
I can't remember what her name is because they keep calling her Mrs. In their last name, and I can't remember what their last name is.
Yeah, I just call her the evil lady.
Think of her as Yvonne Stravinsky because it's. I watched Chuck for the longest time, and so she's still, in my mind, I'm like, Chuck!
Yep.
Every time I see her.
But, we find out that she actually kind of helped move this super conservative movement along. She wrote this book, which inspired a lot of women to, oh, yes, I do need to be at home. I do need to make myself lesser in order to appease him and bring him up. And...
that brings to mind, they use a line in there, which I think is a line from the star from Full House, Cameron. Anyway, in her book, that she put down because servitude does not mean weakness or something like that.
Meekness.
Submission or meekness does not equal weakness. Mm-hmm. And they used that line in the show, and I was like, oh, I think that's a little bit of a jab at Candace Cameron. That's her name.
Good job, yay!
Yay, I remembered. That's, I think, maybe a little bit of a jab, and I wasn't sure if it was actually in the book from the 1985 book. Margaret
I'm
Atwood's book.
I'm not sure, but I can see what she's talking about a little bit. But it all depends on your relationship. You can't be like, this is what works for us, so this is what everybody needs to do. I mean, if that's what works for her, if she is comfortable taking a back seat and letting her husband make all of the decisions, all of them, by all means, if that makes her happy, then let it be so. But most of us nowadays, that we can't live like that. We can't live not having any say in our lives.
Yeah. Well, and especially because, that's one of the tenets, and I know that I don't know how to spell this word correctly, but that's one of the tenets of our country is freedom. And the more that things get taken away, the more that, especially Americans want to fight back. It's because these are my freedoms, and there is a phrase that is said in the show that I know Elizabeth Moss did take it a little bit personally, but because the filming of it was on November 8th, and so when they
right
were
after 45 was elected,
and so they were filming the scene, and he says something about getting. When things get better, it doesn't mean it's for everybody. It's just for some. It's something to that line, to that effect. Is he says that, and it's. I really don't see the truth in that because I think that when things get better, they get better for everybody. That it's not just for one. Mm-hmm. That's when it's selfishness, not getting better.
Well, and if it's getting better for the majority but worse for some, it might not be the best solution. I mean, maybe you need to think about things a little bit further to figure out what a better solution is going to be. Mm-hmm. Because there is a way to make most everybody, if not happy, at least comfortable.
Yeah, and I think this applies to both right and left, to both Republican and Democrat, because I don't agree with everything with the Democrats, and I don't agree everything with the Republicans either. Is that there needs to be compromise. That's why the bipartisan system was put into place, was so that there could be compromise, so that there could be a difference of opinion, so that there could be a sitting down at the table and actually coming to compromise about some things. But that's a long story for another day. So
yeah. And unfortunately, now one party has a lot more power than the other and are purposely doing everything that they can to silence them, even though that's not what the majority of Americans think anymore. The people in Congress and in the House do not represent the majority of what Americans think, which is unfortunate.
Well, and I think that our system was written and put into place by people who were thinking of the 13 colonies. It was much smaller at that time.
A lot of people didn't know how to read. Education was very limited. So they did this, thinking that this is the way it's going to be always. But now, the majority of Americans have at least graduated high school. A lot of us, especially millennials, have at least a few years of college behind us. So we are more educated than we ever have been before. And unfortunately, in Handmaid's Tale, that's taken away from a big chunk of people. In fact, they talk about how the professors or people of higher education were all taken to the colonies, essentially, to die.
Yep. Which
is awful. When you are now attacking education, that's where you're going down the wrong path.
Well, and Margaret Atwood in one of the interviews talks about how she wrote that to be at Harvard's wall because that's where they're supposed to be, and that where Harvard was used to be this seminary, this very strict theology place. It was all about that, and it became this place of liberalism. You've got all these different things that came from Harvard, like Facebook, for instance. Mark Zuckerberg. There's a fantastic movie that has nothing to do with the forming of Facebook, but there's a movie about it that you can watch about that coming out of there. And so that's what she said, that she did want people to feel a little bit uncomfortable when they talked about the executions on the wall there, because that's the wall of Harvard. That's where Harvard is, and that's where some of those big ideas came from. And so that's the main crux of this, to kind of make people feel uncomfortable about that imbalance of opinion, that imbalance of equality, as it were.
Yeah.
And I think that we've lived for way too long with an imbalance in our own society, that these things start rising up and bubbling up to the surface when we live too long with imbalance. But that's my own opinion. That's what I think. So,
well, I do think that there needs to be a balance, or if not necessarily a balance, there needs to be at least a willingness to hear the other side.
Yes,
and to try to at least accommodate.
And again, I'm always going to go back to that reference to the Doctor Who episode where Peter Capaldi delivered that doctor speech in classic Doctor fashion, about that they're just going to need to do what they needed to do from the beginning, is just to sit down and talk. Otherwise, they're just going to be fighting until the end of time, until everybody's dead, and that doesn't work for anybody. Even Jesus talks about this too, is that an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. Instead, turn the other cheek, help people to see you as a human being. Is that's not what he was saying, is to be meek. No, it's about making you be seen as a human being, is to turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, do these things so that people will see you as a human being, that you're not just generous, but you're overly giving of yourself. That you give of yourself so much that they can't help but to see you as human.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good spot to end part 1. And then if you guys stay tuned, we'll be rolling out part 2.
Yep. So we'll see you in part 2. And sorry for the length of these, but yeah, they will be edited, and hopefully we won't be too loud for you, or the fan will be too loud for you either. So
I'm sure the fan is fine, honey.
yes. Okay. Stick around for part 2.